Welcome to The Thriving Mama, the podcast that teaches you not just how to survive, but to thrive in motherhood. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Davis. Plant-based diets are all the rage right now, but are they really all that? There are other options such as sustainable agriculture and regenerative farming practices that need to be considered in this emotionally charged discussion. While most people are familiar with the terms conventional, organic, grass-fed, and plant-based, many are not familiar with regenerative farming. If you care not only about the quality and nutrient density of your food, but the way that the soil, plants, and animals are treated, as well as the health of the planet, this episode is for you. My guest, Autumn Smith, is an expert on regenerative farming practices and the benefits of consuming beef from these farms. Today, we'll discuss the difference between conventional, organic, and regenerative farming and agriculture, ways families can start to incorporate these foods into their diets without breaking the bank, and some of the benefits from consuming regeneratively farmed meat. Autumn Smith is the co-founder and CEO of PaleoValley and Wild Pastures. She suffered from debilitating digestive issues and crippling anxiety for most of her life. Specialist after specialist told her nothing could be done, and she was all ready to give up. But one final attempt at a life free from health issues, Autumn decided to harness the power of whole foods. She cleaned up her diet, and in just 30 days, her IBS was cured, and she also had less anxiety, more mental sharpness, and a bubbly side of her personality that she forgot existed. Since then, Autumn has dedicated her life to helping others harness the power of whole foods to live vibrant lives. In 2013, she and her husband launched PaleoValley, a company dedicated to helping people get the essential nutrients they need without added sugars, grains, and other harmful ingredients. After learning about the healing powers of grass-fed pasture-raised meat, both for bodies and planet, they launched Wild Pastures in 2018, a regenerative meat delivery service that sends 100% grass-fed pasture-raised meat directly to your doorstep. Want to chat and get more personalized support? I'm offering podcast listeners a free 20-minute Thriving Mama check-in where we'll evaluate your physical, mental, and emotional health and provide useful resources to help you on your journey. You'll find that link in the show notes. Hey, everybody. I am super excited today. I have a very special guest, my friend Autumn Smith, who owns PaleoValley. And I, love their products, but she's just a wealth of knowledge about all things like food-based supplements, regenerative agriculture, the importance of, having high quality meat in your diet. She is a wealth of knowledge on so many things. So I'm super excited to have her here today. So thank you so much, Autumn, for coming on.
Thank you, Stephanie, for being a great friend and also for having me on. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Oh, thank you so much. So I'd love for you to share your story about how you pivoted from personal training to nutrition to then launching PaleoValley and Wild Pastures.
Okay. So basically, I had digestive issues since the age of about 10 that no doctor knew how to treat in my small hometown. And it was characterized by just bloating and, pain. I would wake up in the middle of the night and be in so much pain that one time I had my mom take me to the emergency room and they just told me I had IBS. So they ruled out serious pathology. And then they said, we don't really know what's going on. Take some Beano and go home. And so basically I was in physical pain a lot. And as I got into my teens, life became very stressful. And then my gut health issues kind of morphed into mental health issues. And I did all the antidepressants and talk therapy. And I even started abusing substances because those didn't seem to help me. And I just started feeling really numb. And I got kicked out of my parents' house eventually when I was in high school. But fortunately, I had a love of learning and I wanted to be a dancer. So I kept going, went to college, eventually moved to Los Angeles and did a stint professional dancing and then ended up working for Tracy Anderson on tour with J-Lo. That was really awesome. But the place my story changes is when I met my husband. And he got close enough to see the kind of pain I was in. And he was smart enough to know that we hadn't exhausted all of our resources and that we could try new things. And he got online and did a little digging and found diet would be potentially helpful. And we changed to the paleo template. And in 30 days, my digestive issues were gone. And so though I was working as a celebrity fitness trainer, I looked super fit, but I was not well. And I decided that the dietary change had been more impactful than all of the workouts I had done in my entire life. And so I went back to school, got my master's, and then I studied the psychology of eating. And most recently, I've gotten a doctorate. I'm turning in my dissertation this week. Oh my gosh. So all but the defense. And then I'll have my doctorate in holistic nutrition. And we found in PaleoValley because we saw that information was out there, but we wanted to create the products that made it simple for moms, that made it easy for people to eat healthfully and for children to eat healthfully. And then Wild Pastures was just kind of our offshoot of the fact that we had met so many farmers and ranchers. I'm from Montana, and they taught us about the differences between regenerative egg and conventional egg and grass-fed. And we wanted to support these farmers who were doing beyond organic and beyond grass-fed, and we're actually healing ecosystems. And so we founded Wild Pastures as only supporting regenerative farmers in America. And it's a meat delivery service.
Yeah. I know, it's awesome. All of the products are so amazing. But you brought up something that I wanted to ask you about anyways. So I think societally, there's a lot of confusion between understanding what conventional versus organic versus regenerative is. Could you explain that for the audience?
Absolutely. So basically, there's 3 types of agriculture today. There's conventional, which involves the use of tillage and pesticides and chemicals. And it's our traditional, most popular form of agriculture today. And it's depleting. It's taking more than it's putting back. And it's gotten to us to a position where we have very little high quality topsoil left. The estimates are varied, but people say 60 harvests left, 80 harvests left. Of course, it depends on where you're at in the country, but the level of nutrients in our food is lower than any point in history. And our conventional system is responsible for some of that. And then we have what we call sustainable. This is something like organic, right? So organic is not necessarily using chemicals. They are using, certain approved pesticides, but it's still using tillage, right? So, which is one of the most destructive practices because it causes a loss of carbon. And so it's a break even, but it's not getting us better. And that's what regenerative agriculture is. It's taking land and creating a higher or more worthy state. It's not only not hurting the land, but it's making the land better. And so, So organic, when it comes to animal products, for example, you could still have an organic animal be in a feedlot type situation. They only have to be on pasture for a little over 100 days of the year. And they can also be fed grains, which changes the nutritional profile of the product. So organic is a step in the right direction, but it isn't always the best case scenario when it comes to animal products. Even grass-fed is not regulated as of 2016. So you can have a wide variation of practices. This is one of the things our dissertation is looking at. So you can have grass-fed and grain-finished because all cows start their lives on grass. You also have producers who are grass-fed in the beginning of their lives and then only feeding grass at the end of their lives. That's going to have a different nutritional profile. You also have grass-fed and finished producers who are then using rotational grazing practices and diverse pastures. And that is different in the nutritional profile. And so, you can't put everything into buckets. There's too many different practices and too much variation today. But I would, if I were someone looking for something that, best case scenario, you would want a third-party certification coming in today, unfortunately, like the American Grass-Fed Association when it comes to beef.
Right. Yeah. That's something that I talk to people a lot about is the fact that you really should understand where your food is coming from because it's so important, right? Because you could have that organic label or that grass-fed label on there, and it really doesn't mean anything if you don't know the practices behind it. And that's why I tell people, like, you guys have an amazing, obvious delivery service where you can get, meat and do you guys have eggs now too?
Not yet,
oh,
but hopefully.
That would be amazing. But yeah, so like you guys can do it through delivery, but also people who live in agriculturally dense areas, you can look for local farmers and producers and see what type of practices they have, and potentially, connect with them about obtaining, products as well. So I think education is huge. It's just like I tell people, when you're going to a healthcare practitioner of any kind, or, any kind of like a coach or anything like that, you want to understand and know who you're working with. It's the same with your food. I mean, I feel like now more than ever, because like you said, the topsoil is so depleted. It's so much less nutrient dense than it ever was before. And it's affecting us. It's affecting our health and our well-being on so many levels, and not just us, but the entire planet. And so could you speak to that a little bit too, about how regenerative agricultural practices are actually better for the planet and can be, more sustainable for future generations?
Yes. And like you said, we're depleting our topsoil at a rate, estimates vary, 10 times faster than it's being built. And if we lose our topsoil, we don't often think about it, but that topsoil sustains us, right? It is the beginning of 97% of our calories, right? Our food and our goods are made from topsoil. Fuels are made from topsoil. If we can't lose our topsoil and expect to continue on. And so the cool thing about regenerative ag is that it's like a relationship with the land. It looks at a plot of land and says, what does this plot of land need? Some of its benefits include holding water. So everybody knows, they say that wars are going to be fought over water, and regenerative ag is able to restore the soil structure in such a way that when it rains, the water is actually held in the soil. Like tens of thousands of gallons per acre can be held in soil that has healthy soil structure, right? And when you see these erosions and floods and droughts, that's often because the soil structure is broken, not because we're not getting enough water. So floods, droughts, wildfires, these can all be helped when we have healthy levels of soil function and carbon in the soil and soil organic matter and life in the soil. That's kind of the basis of it all. The other benefit is that carbon sequestration.
Yes. Yep. I was just thinking that.
Yes. So we have all of this carbon in our atmosphere today, much of it being released because of fossil fuels, but some of it's also released because of our agricultural practices, because a huge amount of carbon should be underground, can be underground. And you can use regenerative agriculture, and especially with grazing animals, they can sequester huge amounts of carbon because the grass that they're grazing acts as a straw, takes that carbon out of the air and puts it down through the roots and into the soil. In fact, a lot of the carbon in plants is released as root exudates. It's like a food for the bugs in the soil. And the cool part is, in exchange for that carbon, the bugs in the soil, the life in the soil, make the nutrients and minerals available to the plants. And so when our industrial chemicals come in and destroy those microbial relationships, and tillage destroys that microbial life, we have that taxi service is broken. So carbon isn't sequestered and the nutrients aren't gaining access to the plants, and therefore our animals are less nutritious as well. And then we have biodiversity. We're kind of the only species that's come in and tried to create huge swaths of land that only have one thing, but resilience is biodiversity, right? Life is biodiversity. And so you'll see even the Audubon Society is getting really excited about regenerative grazing because it's bringing back the bird populations, right? When you take away the pesticides and the chemicals, we're not killing bees, right? And so you'll see explosions of life above ground, but that begins with the explosion of life below ground. And then my final benefit that I love to talk about is just farmer livelihood. Farmers have one of the highest rates of suicide, and they're trapped in this system where they just kind of accrue debt, and they have to buy all this expensive machinery, and they don't always make a profit. And so regenerative agriculture also helps farmers and ranchers make money again, and they can generate multiple streams of income, right? They can have pigs and chickens and cows and healthy soil that's creating nutrient dense food and that is resilient from year to year. And so you see farmers and ranchers and young people becoming interested in the profession again, which is really, really exciting. I remember when I started on this mission to help educate people around grass-fed beef and regenerative ag, my friends in Montana laughed at me because they didn't understand. And now a lot of them are asking how they can start to transition because they see that it's absolutely the future. And we have to do it if our children's generation is going to be able to grow their own food.
The next thing I wanted to ask you about was, the big debate, it's kind of the ongoing topic of plant-based, and everyone thinking that plant-based is better, when I would say that regenerative agriculture is actually better for the planet, and I know that's super controversial, but I feel like the more we know and the more we investigate this, there's the plant, I feel like just like all these diets, you get all the fad diets. I kind of feel like plant-based right now is kind of like a fad and an agenda. So if you could speak more to the benefits, of the regenerative versus plant-based, I would love for you to dive into that.
Yeah, well, you can grow plants in a very environmentally destructive way, right? If you're using glyphosate and fertilizers and pesticides and a lot of tillage, and you're creating water erosion and depleting the soil, that's not a healthy diet, right? It's not one when it comes to planetary health. It's not a healthy diet, at least. And so you can raise animals are not the problem. Animals have been in our environments. They're essential for the development of the grasslands. We have been eating them for millions of years. They contain nutrients our bodies absolutely require, like B12 and iron and zinc in highly bioavailable forms, right? And in the instance of B12, you can't really get it anywhere else. Omega-3 fatty acids in their long chain forms, EPA, DHA, DPA. And so I think it's overly simplistic. When you look at the models that they're looking at to compare plant foods and animal foods, what they're comparing often is calories or grams, right? But you can't really capture the value of a food when you are bringing it only down to calories and grams, right? Plants and animals contain different foods or different nutrients, right? And some of them we absolutely require. So when you adjust for that fact and you look at certain nutrients, then certain animal and plant foods become more similar in terms of their environmental impact. I think we just have to recognize we've been consuming both plants and animals for millions of years, and different people will require different proportions. But because animals can be raised, have been raised, are being raised in ways that are environmentally sustainable and even regenerative, it's not fair to say that all animal products are causing environmental issues, right? Certain types are, absolutely. And yes, 90% of the animal products you buy at grocery stores are coming from factory farms, feedlots that aren't helping the environment. But that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of ranchers and farmers raising animals in ethical ways that absolutely not only support the environment, but maybe even critical for the restoration of our environment. Animals, fertilize, right? Animals stimulate the growth of grass, which brings carbon down. Animals help seeds germinate when they're that impact, right? Animals, when they are foraging and consuming, they kind of weed. They act as weed eaters, essentially. So the land needs animals. This is one of my favorite quotes from one of our farmers. The land needs animals like flowers need bees. And any land without animals is in a state of decline. And people might say, well, why do you have to eat them? Only because for us, that is what our physiology has evolved consuming, right? I don't think everyone needs to eat a ton of animal products, and it's always your choice. But I do think we have to come to acknowledge the fact that humans have been consuming animal products and they contain nutrients that we can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, I have been practicing functional medicine for almost 2 decades, and I've seen the benefits of the diversity in the diet. It's really interesting because I always think back to when I first started practicing, and I remember this so strongly. It was like Candida diets were all the rage. So taking out all the sugar and all the carbs, that doesn't work. And then it was like paleo diet and autoimmune paleo diet and SCD and all of these special diets. And it's funny because now I don't like any of those diets really. I like them as a therapeutic tool. I don't think that we are meant to eliminate large categories of foods from our diet because we need diversity. And that diversity is going to be different for everybody, right? So like some people are going to be able to do lots of plants and a little bit of meat. And some people might need to do more meat and less, plants. But it's like, it's figuring out what your body needs and not being super over the top restrictive, because that's when you do get into trouble from a health standpoint. And so I love what you're talking about.
Thank you. And yeah, I think a lot of dietitians push back against, gluten elimination, but there's at the same time saying, but do eliminate the animal products when it's still, the same category of food. And yeah, I think the most diverse diet possible is best case scenario. And I don't eat a ton of meat myself. It's just not what I feel best consuming, but I'm absolutely an advocate for it for other people because my husband requires a lot more. My son requires a lot more. And at certain stages of life, if you're trying to improve your body composition, age gracefully, shut off your appetite, right? Animal products are some of our most valuable tools.
Right. That. And then also, it also kind of begs the question of like keto and carnivore diet. Those, again, I think can be really good therapeutic tools. I have seen them both. I would say more carnivore than keto, but I've seen them both really reduce somebody's like autoimmune flares or inflammation in general. And then they can slowly, graduate back to a more diverse diet. But yeah, it's like, yeah, I think we need to think about, just overall health and we need to I think we need to have a more positive relationship with food and where our food comes from, because that I feel like the way marketing goes and the way that just the media is surrounding food, it creates so much taboo, right? First, we're being sold like through, advertisements, like just tons of processed crap. But then it's like you have to be on this diet because we want you to look this way. And, it plays on people's insecurities and fears. And so I think that bringing back this relationship with a good relationship with food and the land and where your food comes from is part of like the healthy movement we need for the future.
Absolutely. And that's the only food rule that I really try to ascribe to is just as many whole foods as possible.
Yes. Whole food. That's what I do with now when I'm working with people, that's what I do. It's like whole foods. I want you to eat whole foods. That's all.
And it's funny because we need to reestablish local food systems too. So like you were saying, farmers markets or, things like that, that's actually going to change the nutrient profile in the food and connect you to and create like this sustainable food system. That's really what we need, right? It's really hard for some people to access high quality food right now. And I understand that. And especially, and with the price, but that's exactly what we're trying to do with our company is just to make it accessible. And right now, 4 large corporations own like 85% of the beef processing in America. And that makes us really vulnerable. And those people making the decisions in the far off offices as CEOs in other countries, they don't care about our communities. And every time we buy their products, we're allowing them to make those decisions. So yes, this is one of the biggest, I think, issues of our generation and such an opportunity for us all to kind of just reclaim our health and reclaim our local food systems.
Right. And voting with your dollars, right? Where you choose to spend your dollars. So, and that brings me naturally to the next question. And you kind of just touched on it. The world right now is very expensive, but especially meat. Like I see when I go into the grocery store, prices are falling, like again, on like lots of fruits and vegetables, but meat is still kind of sticking up there. So if a family is very interested in incorporating more regeneratively farmed or, food into their diets, where would you tell them to start?
Yeah. Well, you can obviously start with our company, Wild Pastures, because it's a meat delivery service. It's 40% less. And the reason we did that is because we think everybody deserves access to high quality food, We've had to be really creative. And that's essentially, we have two companies that work together and share staff and share resources and warehouses. And, we just try to use every part of the animal. We sell the bones in the bone broth. We sell the tallow in our restaurant. We sell the tallow. You know what I mean? We're just utilizing the whole animal, which allows us to keep our costs down. But yeah, so Wild Pastures meat delivery service is available everywhere in the United States and is more affordable than anywhere else. Other than that, I would go into if you have a farmer's market, if you didn't want to do that, that is where I would start. It was one of my favorite things when I lived in California. And you can ask them about their practices. And you can even ask them about the location of their farm. And a farmer actually taught me this. You ask them where their farm is, and then you just look on Google Earth and you can kind of verify what their operation actually looks like. And what you want to know is, are you using a grass-based system? Are you using pesticides? Are you using chemicals? Are you taking into consideration soil health? What are your animals eating? Are they eating, grass, or are they eating a lot of grains? And so, yeah, farmers markets are a great place to go to. And, you'll also see a lot of grass-fed meats and, more responsibly raised. I just saw regeneratively raised eggs the other day at Sprouts. And people are, seeing that, this trend is growing and consumers want to know how their food is raised. They're caring. And so, you can even find, as Sprouts has some relatively inexpensive grass-fed beef these days and the regeneratively raised eggs. So those are kind of my top three choices.
Yeah. No, I think farmers markets are great too, because like you said, you can actually talk to the farmer, and lots of times that because they're cutting out the middleman, the price is better. And that's similar to where I said, check out your local area, because lots of times there are farmers who are selling directly to consumers, and you can buy a side of beef, half of a cow or a quarter of a cow, or the same with a pig and, all of that type of stuff. So those are also ways to do it in a more affordable manner, because I know that's been a big challenge that I talk to a lot of my clients and patients about is the rising costs of food. So that can be a huge challenge. So one other question I wanted to make sure that we talked about was getting, kids and families eating healthier, because that can be a challenge, especially getting little ones to eat healthier. So when you're talking to people about this, what kind of tips do you have for that?
Oh, goodness. Well, for our Mav, we've been teaching him, first of all, just what do these different foods do for me? We used to give him his green juice. It was ninja juice, right? It was going to make us strong, right? And, magnesium-rich foods are going to help you feel calm, and animal protein first. I say, if you want to build strong muscles, if you want to grow tall, we start with the high-quality animal products. And so I, always making it relatable to them, just really making it simple. And the second one is eating it yourself, right? They're just constantly watching you. And my son the other day was just like, oh, I know you don't usually eat breakfast, Mom. You're doing some intermittent fasting. I didn't even know he had picked up on that. Oh, okay, buddy. Yeah, and he was right. So he was watching in ways that I didn't even realize. And the last one is cooking. We taught, one of the best places that we got Mav into cooking was to teach him knife skills. There's just knife skill classes, kids cooking classes. And so he felt so empowered, and he actually sometimes wanted to help with dinner preparation. But honestly, the biggest needle mover for us, and it didn't always work as well when he was really young, but now that he's 9, he just turned 9, teaching him why. If you continue to eat a lot of sugar, you can have some sometimes. It might negatively impact your immune system. You might not feel as good. Your energy levels are going to be up and down, and helping him do an experiment too, send him to school one day with a protein-centric breakfast, ask him to see how it feels, and then send him to school with, sometimes we do French toast, which isn't a super carb heavy meal, but it can be, and just help them notice oh, what'd you feel then, in a non-judgmental way. And also this last thing is just really allowing them to take the lead and to listen to their own bodies. I never demand that he eat anything. I make him try everything, at least one bite. We do a lot of fermented foods. Pretty much every dinner, he has a bite of fermented food, which can actually help kind of shift their taste buds. But I'm not going to force anything on him. I never require that he finishes his plate. And I always encourage him to just listen to his own body's feedback so he can kind of take ownership of his choices too.
Yeah, I think having kids cook is really important. Like you said it, they take more of an interest and then they care more, but also like letting them go shopping with you and have some choice there and empowering them can be really helpful as well to try to get them kind of eating healthier if they're not.
And the last thing I'll say is too, if you just, when he comes home from school, I just try to have, all the healthy options available. And they're just in sight. You just cut a tray. There's olives, there's carrots, there's a yummy dip, there's some beef sticks, there's some cheese. And just making the healthy choice like also easy for them is a simple way to move the needle.
That is exactly what I have found the same thing too, is like having the healthy choices available makes it way easier. So much better.
And we also don't keep a lot of sugar in the home.
Same note.
It's not even an option. We go out for those kinds of foods.
Yeah.
And it's a celebration.
That helps a lot because I feel like with kids, when given the option, they're always going to gravitate to what's more sugary and carby.
Yep.
More than anything else.
Yeah.
Especially it's interesting that you mentioned, like, as he is getting older, like he understands more. I totally agree because I've seen that with Camden, my older one. But I also feel like the peer pressure at school becomes more too. So that's like another battle that you're having is, oh, well, my friends are eating all this stuff, so I want to do it. So I'm like, go ahead. I'm like, go ahead and try it. And then, like you said, see how you feel afterwards. And he does realize that he does not feel so good.
Exactly. Yeah. And he has a gluten sensitivity. And it's very painful for him and embarrassing. And so I don't try to micromanage it anymore at school. I send him to school with his enzymes and I say, you make the choice, bud. It's up to you, but here's what happens. And sometimes he does. But yeah, I just think we have to allow them to learn on their own time. And I know when it comes to like middle school, he's going to probably be able to buy whatever he wants. And so giving him those small doses of ownership and power, I think are really important.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. It's interesting navigating those waters. And it's funny that you mentioned the enzymes because I have those too. And Camden will be like, I want to eat gluten. Can I have the enzymes? So it's funny. It's so funny to watch that happen. Yeah. It's like, well, at least you're paying attention, right?
No, I'm impressed.
Yeah. Right. One of the last things I wanted to ask you about was the docu-series that we talked a little bit about yesterday.
Yes. So the docu-series is really exciting because we started to do it for Wild Pastures because people, whenever they unsubscribe, we ask why. And as we talked about earlier, many people think they have to go vegan for the planet because that's what the mainstream narrative suggests. But we decided to shoot a series of videos. There's actually 7 in the series, and go back and help people understand why animal products are important and how you can choose ones that align with both human and planetary health. So the first episode, it goes through why we were been taught to fear meat. It's a fascinating story with a lot of different converging influences. One of the major ones being religion, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and they taught that meat was sinful, and Ellen G. White. And there's a lot, the Adventist Church is very, very influential, not only, in our dietary guidelines, but also in hospitals throughout the world. And even a Seventh-day Adventist founded kind of the Academy of Dietetics. And so, Lena Cooper. Yeah. So you already have that kind of built-in bias against animal products. Yeah. And then you also have people who stand to make a lot of money from creating plant-based foods. Think about the high levels of processing. You can eat plant-based and be eating processed foods all day long, right? So you have that. And then you have this misunderstandings around the environmental implications of animals, right? So you have well-meaning activists who don't understand that animals can be raised in ways that align with environmental health. And so all of these influences have kind of convinced us that animals are the heart of the problem when they're not. And then we talk about meat and cholesterol and saturated fat and how the evidence about their lack of healthfulness or, their deleterious effects is essentially crumbling, definitely for cholesterol. Many recent papers have shown that saturated fat is no longer the dietary villain that we thought it was. And then we talk about the unique nutrients in animal foods and even a trial on the carnivore diet, which was more like a survey, but showed that a lot of people improved a crazy amount of symptoms, autoimmune disease, right? Type 2 diabetes, like type 2 diabetics getting off of medication, weight loss, on and on. And then we talk about Dr. Walls and her incredible journey for autoimmune conditions and the part that her vegetarian diet might have played in the development of her autoimmune condition. And then we go to the detriments of vegan diets. And as I said, I don't need anyone to eat just like I eat. But when it comes to children and, pregnancy, I do have concerns around the vegan diet and the fact that many pregnant and, expectant mothers and even parents just don't understand the nutritional shortcomings. And so we go through that in a very non-biased way. And then we go on to the environmental argument and we talk about myths. We talk about feedlots versus regenerative ag. What exactly does it look like? What are the detriments of glyphosate, pesticides, hormones, antibiotic resistance? And then we end with my dissertation and the exploration of how does an animal product's nutritional composition change based on production system, which I'm working on a paper right now, should be published soon with Dr. Van Vliet and Joseph and Travis and many of his colleagues at Utah State University and the Bionutrient Institute on the preliminary findings of the Beef Nutrient Density Project, which looked at over 100 different producers throughout North America and the UK, and then made correlations between the practices and the nutritional composition. And they're finding some really exciting things, especially around plant compounds. Very unique plant compounds end up in cows or in beef that is fed on pastures, especially diverse pastures. And many considerations or like other prior pieces of research haven't really considered these phytonutrients. And I think it's a really cool piece of emerging research. They've also found that cattle raised in feedlots have mitochondrial damage and just like a profile of more of a metabolically unhealthy animal. And so Van Vliet will also be going in and doing some clinical trials on what happens when you eat feedlot meat versus meat raised regeneratively in the human body. There was one trial that already explored this, but it looked at CAFO meat versus kangaroo meat raised in the wild. And they did find lower levels of inflammation after the meal when you ate the wild meat. But that's not a beef to beef comparison. So Dr. Van Vliet will be doing that comparison. And he'll also be throwing in plant-based meats.
That's good. That'll be awesome to see that. I think that's all really important information for everybody to have and for it to get out there. Because like you said, I feel like there are a lot of controlling parties that have agendas that really want to push forward that, plant-based is the best, the best way to go. And yeah, I think for many, many people, it's not, right? And I think it's interesting that you also bring up like the pregnancy and then even like pregnancy, preconception, postpartum. There are so many things that you're missing there. And that is going to not only impact you and the baby, but then I would say especially, I feel like postpartum is even harder, especially if you're nursing. It's harder on your body than pregnancy. And you become more and more and more depleted, right? And the more depleted you become, the more issues and symptoms can arise. And so I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle as well.
Absolutely. Long chain omega-3 fatty acids are essential for the development of the brain, DHA specifically. And then we have B12. There are so many devastating case studies of B12 deficiency and its irreversible consequences in infants.
I see a lot of that in practice, like over the years, because I see so many kids and I like the folate, B12 and fatty acid deficiencies cause a lot of problems, like from, anything from like mood and behavior and focus to just causing overt, issues. and illnesses. So yeah, I think it'll be great for people to be able to hear this information and understand, what the impact is. So, I wanted to ask you, where can the audience find you? And then is there anything that you would like to share with them?
Ooh, well, you can find me at autumn@PaleoValley.com, or you can just go to PaleoValley.com, wildpastures.com. If you're in the Denver, Boulder area, we have wildpasturesburgercompany.com.
Yeah, and it's awesome.
Yeah. And I just thank you, Stephanie. We're going to go there tonight, actually. And I just encourage you to invest in the way that you feed yourself, right? Because we are the food that we consume. We are what our animals consume. We can't separate ourselves from our food and from our environment. And so every time you make a decision with that in mind, I think the repercussions are huge. And hopefully, and it doesn't need to be an overhaul overnight, just one small step.
That's what I tell people.
Every month.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
That's exactly right. It doesn't need to be perfect. There is no perfect, right? And so just one small step, whenever you can take it.
Right, exactly. And it's like, it doesn't have to be crazy or complex. I mean, just making simple foundational lifestyle changes, like, just improving your diet, drinking clean water, breathing clean air, like we were talking about before, moving your body and getting out in the sun. I mean, just doing those things can make a huge impact on your overall health. So thank you so much for being here, Autumn. I really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of your wisdom with us.
Oh, I really appreciate it. It's always a blast with you, Stephanie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. If you made it this far, I truly appreciate you. Remember, knowledge is just the beginning. Taking action is what truly sparks change. If you're overwhelmed and don't have enough energy to make it through the day, I invite you to book a free 20-minute coaching call with me. It's a no-obligation chat where we can discuss your health goals and how I might be able to help you achieve them. Visit the link in the episode description to book that call. Until next time, keep striving for wellness, and remember, you have the power to not just survive, but thrive in motherhood.